pray. Dear God, we pray that you'll be with us through your Spirit. Speak to us through your word in the name of Jesus. Amen. Happy Sabbath, everybody. Thunder from the clouds. Very good. We were in the green room, or the lighted room here in the bottom before first service, right? And then Kyle was sort of apologizing. He's like, or apologizing, no, but saying, "Hey, Tiago, thank you for coming last minute to speak for us." And normally this is the case, right? If I'm up here, something went wrong, basically. And I don't mind that. That's completely fine. I love it, actually. But I'm particularly happy because this time nobody was sick, or died or anything. But there was like a miscommunication, so here I am today. But it was funny to me hearing like last minute and then the reality that he called me on Wednesday, which is a few days ago. It made me think of Brazil. One of the few times, later times I went back there, I went to a small church, and then I got there, people sort of knew me. He said, "Okay, so here's your Sabbath school that you're going to teach." And I said, "Oh, okay. So I'm going to teach the Sabbath school." So I teach the Sabbath school, right? And I'm like, "Okay, we had a good time here." So I sit down, and then another lady comes along and says, "So what's the theme of your sermon this morning?" I said, in the hymn, right? The beginning hymn and the end, you have to know the hymn as well also. And that's last minute, right, to me. So Wednesday, it's like, oh, there's an eternity of time. We'll be just fine. And that was my thought until I opened up Ecclesiastes chapter 5, which is our theme today. And I said, uh-oh, I really needed like a month or something like that. We have a Bible study here on campus, and you're all invited to come. It's on the Campus Ministries Lounge under the cafeteria every Wednesday at 10:30 in the morning. And we've been doing it, Christian Vogel and I, friend, he's here today, for a couple of years maybe, and we are dealing with Genesis 4. We started in Genesis 1, and 2 years now we're in Genesis 4. The last 3 weeks, it's like a week for every verse, basically, and then I look at Ecclesiastes 5, and I'm like, okay. And based on first service, I know we will not get to the end of it, so basically, let's just enjoy ourselves, shall we? Are you relaxed? Very good. Let me begin with this. I'm going to read you a text, and the first question, the first challenge of the morning is I want you to guess who wrote it. Okay? Let's go. I'm going to read it. Who wrote the text? Not a biblical text. Here you go. Text says, "Every church became a theater where preachers, instead of church teachers, instead of being church teachers, caring not to instruct people, strove to attract admiration, to bring opponents to public scorn, and to preach only novelties and paradoxes such as would tickle the ears of their congregation. Of the old religion, nothing survives but its outward forms, and faith has become a mere compound of credulity and prejudice. If these preachers had but one spark of light from high, they would not insolently rave, but would learn to worship God more wisely. If they were concerned for their opponents' souls instead of their own reputations, they would no longer persecute, but rather be filled with pity and compassion." Who wrote this? Who? Come on. Who wrote this? We know, right? Who? Who's that? No. Not Auntie Ellen. No, I'm saying, who's Auntie Ellen? I'm foreign. I'm sorry. And this is my excuse to everything. If I do something wrong, even purposefully, I say, no, I'm sorry. I'm foreign. I'm another country. Auntie Ellen. Ellen G. White, right? Doesn't this sound like Ellen G. White? Yes or no? Yeah, sounds like Ellen G. White. In the first service, sort of the older congregation here that we have, everybody was like, Ellen G. White, after I asked the question. And I laughed because it was funny. But yeah, basically, that's what we think, right? Somebody who will write something like this, Ellen G. White. You know who wrote it, really? It's a guy called Benedict Spinoza. Anybody heard about Spinoza? No? Let me explain who Spinoza is. Spinoza is the father of the historical critical method, which is sort of the method that, undermines the entire authority of the Bible, that is sort of widely applied today. It's principles of, yeah, God, the text says God spoke, but in reality, this is, when we reconstruct the text, this is the religion of their time. Spinoza doesn't believe in myths or supernatural. All these things have a reasonable explanation. So basically, the guy who is frustrated with church and preaching and all the wild whatever that's going on in his time is the father of the historical critical method. After reading Spinoza, I cried. That's the truth. I said, why? I mean, I could relate to the man in his introduction, basically what he wrote, but then he goes off to undermine the whole text in order to bring out this ethical sense of Scripture, which he thought would remedy the situation. The reality is, reading Spinoza, I realized that every single transition in theology or philosophy and history occurs in the background of this frustration. And I don't know if you also feel the frustration, but this is a frustration of our days as well. I mean, I have several people in my family that are nowhere near a church just because when they see it, they say, yeah, no, thanks. I get it, but Gandhi even, right? I get what Christians are talking about. Sounds beautiful, but the life, well, this has always been the case. Since Spinoza to Gandhi to today, there is a huge gap between faith or knowledge and life, right? Isn't that our issue today as well? I mean, it is for me. One of the things I long for the most these days in church, and then again, I have been struggling for the last year or so with the concept of church altogether, you see. What are we doing here? Just okay, I sit down and there are a bunch of things going on. It's oh, this is nice. I'm passive. I'm just looking at this go. And I go home and nothing changes. Basically, Spinoza, he said, if Muslims, Jews, and Christians just exchange clothing, during the week, they're all pagans to me. Because they profess a faith, and that's great, but in life, they are corrupt people. So the point or the problem of Spinoza, Gandhi, is the same problem we have today. And guess what? It's the same problem that Ecclesiastes has. The same problem the author, the Kohelet, the preacher, Solomon has. He looks at religion. He looks at these things that are happening. He said, this is all vapor. It's all vapor. So today what I want to do is, because I have this allergy these days to passiveness in church. The last few times I spoke in here, I sort of did this and I want to do it again. I'm going to separate 5 to 10 minutes for us to do an exercise together, which is basically read the Bible. I think it's important. In the end, I'm not going to get to the end of what I want to say. And in the end, because Kyle asked me last minute, the good thing about this is I don't have all the answers to this text. When I started reading it, I started putting things together. And the cool thing is that today I'm not a preacher who has all the answers for you. I'm with you. I'm struggling and I'm trying to put things together. And we're not going to get to the end of what I wrote down. But at least we need to read the text together. Because this vulnerability, this sense that, we need something else than the performances or what we do. We need to throw ourselves into the text, and I want you to experience that. You know what? Because Kohelet, which is the name of the book, Ecclesiastes, means the preacher, the teacher. So we have a conflict of preachers. I don't want to be the first one speaking a bunch of foolish words. I want you to experience the voice of the preacher for yourself. So today we're going to deal with Ecclesiastes chapter 5. There are 20 verses. I mean, you're here with your friends in church, so just turn to your friends. If you don't know the person who's next to you, make a new friend. Open your Bibles and read the text. Chapter 5, 20 verses. And I want you to ask or answer 2 questions as you read together. Each read a few verses. That's what we're going to do. Question number 1, what are the 3 main themes of this chapter? There are 3 main themes in the chapter. Question number 2, and I'm already giving you a hint of where the first one is found. What is one lesson, or what's the point of verses 1 to 7? Because we will not have time to deal with all 20 verses, obviously. We will only deal with the first 7 verses, and the reality is, based on first service, we'll deal with probably the first 2 verses only. So, 10 minutes, or 5 to 10 minutes, what are the 3 main themes of the whole chapter? What is the point of verse 1 to 7 where we're going to remain in? Read together. Turn to 3 or 4 people around you, read the text together and talk. You see, this is, and start now. Go, 1, 2, 3, go. Read. And I don't want to see anybody alone. So you guys gather here together. Israel here. You 2 read together. Good. That was a time is up thing. Are we good? Another one? Time is up. All right. Good. So, beautiful text, right? Crazy. I mean, when I read it the first time, I said, oh, we're in trouble, Sabbath. But good. Question 1. What are the 3 main themes of this chapter? Anybody? Come on. What's one theme of the chapter? Keeping your promises. That's sort of like a practical lesson, right? So keep your vows. That's one of the counsels. I'm looking for the overall themes. No, it's fine. This is good. I want to hear. I want to hear you guys. There is no, and we're going to pick up on the promise thing in a second. What? Know your place. Okay? Also sort of a counsel that emerges from the second. But themes, like big, think bigger. What are all these, this chapter is talking about 3 huge things that have to do with the things you said. That's one of them. What? Lessons in life, okay. This is wisdom in general, right? And we're going to get to that in a second as well. But what are the big themes? What is it talking about? If you could summarize, all of this has to do with wisdom, yes. What else? This first section begins with, guard your steps when you will go into the presence of? What is this about? Thank you. Yes. It's about worship. It's about religion. It's about these things that we do here. You see? That's number 1. That's from verses 1 to 7. Perfect. And all these things you guys said are in the context of faith, life, religion, worship. Good. Now, the other 2 sections of the chapter, like verse 7 and 8, they're in the middle, sort of in the transition, talks about power, right? Justice, about this idea of the king, which we're not going to have time to get to. Then the last portion is about one important thing that we know and we talk about all the time it's what? Materialism, which is under the umbrella of what? Cash, money, right? So, worship, religion, justice, money. Huge themes, huge topics, and we're going to spend time in the first topic, which is the one that addresses us right here, right now, right? Worship, religion. And when you get home, you can explore the others, but this is what we're going to talk about today. These big categories, and how Solomon, how Kohelet looks at all these things and says all these things, depending on how we approach them, are useless, are vapor. But before we get there, before we start reading the text, we need a bit of context, obviously. There's one big change that happens from chapters 1 to 4 and now. So far, Solomon has been speaking in the first person. He has said some things like the following. I have seen all the works that have been done under the sun. I have seen that this is from the hand of God. I have seen the task God gave the sons of men. I have seen that in the place of justice there is wickedness. I have seen every living under the sun. So everything that Solomon talks about up until now is sort of these ethical principles, observations that he is sharing with the reader, right? But now beginning in chapter 5, the tone changes because the chapter has 10 imperatives all of a sudden. And imperatives imply what? Direct instructions, right? We're moving from these ethical principles to actual instruction. This is what you're going to do. And why does that happen in wisdom literature in general? Why do you think that's important? To sort of go from the principles, okay, this is the general idea, to actually now guard your steps when you go into the house of God. What makes the necessity of this change? Why is it written that way? And it's very simple, the answer. Because the knowledge of truth in life is not enough. We need to know how to live as well. And again, this brings us back to the original problem we began with, which is what? The distinction of knowledge and faith and life. And how our situation today is like the situation of the past, where there is a huge gap in between both. We know what is truth, we get it, but our form of life couldn't be farther away from it. It's not enough for us to know what is right. We have to live right. And you know what I've learned? I've been reading about law, a lot of biblical law lately. We have the Bible study on Genesis 4, and this is even more true there. The easiest place to hide our wickedness is behind a biblical text. Consider that. The easiest place to hide our wicked ways is behind the biblical text. Do you remember the story of the rich young ruler? right? He sort of comes up to Jesus and says, hey, how do I get to heaven? How do I get eternal life? And he says, well, keep the commandments, right? And we Adventists say, yes, that's right, keep the commandments. You do what is right. And then he says, well, all these things I know and I have done, right? So then Jesus steps back and he says, okay, good. And have you ever wondered why Jesus gives an answer that seemingly has nothing to do with the question originally? This is like always the case, and it was never clear to me until recently. Because Jesus in his responses is not dealing particularly with the issue that they think they know is the right question. He brings them back to the wider context, the principle behind all these things that they're asking about. So he's like, Jesus, okay, you keep the law? Sure, okay. So let's go ahead and give all you have and give to the poor. Right? You know, right? So now let's see if what you know comes from somewhere, if there's life in it. And the story tells that the rich young ruler just left. Because he was hiding his wickedness. He was hiding his true reality behind the form, behind the text. Right? I keep it. I do it to the letter. Does it have any root to life? This is Jesus, when Jesus comes in. Does it have any root to life? Go and love God above all things, right? First 4 commandments. Love your neighbor as yourself. Second set of, so Jesus goes there. So do you love your neighbor? Okay, good. Go and give all your possessions to the poor. Rich young ruler walks away. The gap, the distinction, the disconnection of thinking, theology, faith from life. So he withdrew. We want to obey the text. That's the point. We want to know what is right? Give us the church manual. What does the text say? What does the law say? But we don't want to be educated by it. You see. Why do you think that Jesus, when he was in the wilderness with the devil tempts him with what? With a biblical text, right? He says, throw yourself, eat the bread, and this is the biblical background to it. Doesn't the devil quote biblical texts? How does Jesus resist it? He quotes other biblical texts. So we have text against text. Oh, there's a problem all of a sudden. What's the difference? Only one of them had the form of life. Wasn't taking the text out of context, was living the reality of it. And one was victorious in the temptation. We want to obey a text. We don't want to be educated by it. The purpose of Torah, of Scripture, of Ecclesiastes is not to give us a manual on how to proceed only. You know, I mounted the whole, when my son was born, I had to mount the whole room, right? Crib, stuff, and we got everything from IKEA because we're poor, basically, right? So we went to IKEA, we bought the stuff, and then there's a manual, and that was the day I felt the most stupid, apart from the days I present papers in the seminary. But I was mounting and said, but eventually everything worked out. So even stupid people can follow manuals, basically. But the problem is that the Bible doesn't function like a manual on how to proceed. All these things were given to us to educate our hearts into how to behave. I mean, even this thing of women's ordination, which I don't want to go into right now because, I'm exhausted about it, but think about it, you know. We're looking for a text that justifies our procedure when the text is given to educate our hearts into how to proceed on a given new situation, you see. It's easier to hide our wickedness behind the text, but not to be educated by it. And the sad thing about it is that the more we detach our life, or true life, from our knowledge, from theology and the text, the more the things that we do in church become a spectacle, right? Become a spectacle. Just become forms, you know. I come over here sometimes, and not here, wherever I go to travel, I sit down sometimes, and I struggle, again, with the concept of church, like I told you. And I look at this sometimes, it's like one thing after the other, and there I'm sitting like if I was at home watching something on the TV, you know, performances after performances, coming from nothing. And I'm sitting there with my struggles, with my existential crises, and nothing connects to my life. Literally nothing connects to my life. The pastor opens the Bible to speak, and there he's using the sermon to preach like something else that has nothing to do with it. And we have entertainment. And you know what the philosophy of entertainment is? Simply put, it's fleeing from reality. Right? Why do we enjoy entertainment rather than admonition? Because this is what Solomon is doing. Not enough to know ethics and principles. Here's the admonition. Here's the wisdom I'm imparting to you. And we don't like wisdom. Why? Because it's the opposite of entertainment. We want entertainment. We don't want to study Scripture. Our Bible study. We sometimes wonder, why do you think not many people come? Well, we don't want that, you see. We want to flee from reality. We want the reality shows. reality show. We want the script. We want the movie. We want to flee from the issues at home. For my son having a fever, we want to flee from my wife and I having problems, or anything that you might have, from the problems at work. We want to flee from it. We don't want reality. We want entertainment. And because we have detached our life from the text, church becomes entertainment as well. I mean, think about it. We call this a program, right? It's not an event anymore. We assume that God is here. Who told you God is here? What if he's not here? We assume it. We sing, oh, thank you, God, because you're here. Who said God is here? That's another sermon that I'm not going to go into. But, we need to be vulnerable, people. What are we doing here? If we don't consider these things, if we don't realize our own issues, we're going to get carried away into something else. So wisdom, and what Ecclesiastes is doing, is the opposite of entertainment. Why? Because it's not allowing you to flee from reality. It's allowing you to face reality. Last time I spoke here, we spoke about transfiguration, right? Disciples going up with Jesus in the top of the mountain, the whole show. And that's exactly the point. Peter's trying to say, let's maintain this. Let's just stay up here. It's so nice up here. And Jesus says, that's not the point. We need transfiguration because we need to go back into the valley where the demons are, you see. And why do we make church into entertainment, do you think? Fleeing reality, no connection to life. We have to face our reality. This is the purpose of Ecclesiastes. What we do, these performances, this reality, this fake masquerade of like dressing and doing all the schmeal that we do in church, it needs to end. We're going to lose a generation. We're going to lose our kids. We're going to lose you, probably, you see. The friends, you're in college. The friends I went to college with, several are out of church. They went to church. They sat down by me. Why? Why do you think they're out of church? Several reasons, but part of it, there's a gap between what we say and what we do. Our life. And we need to face it. I'm a problematic person. I'm not a holy person. I'm not a saint to be speaking. I'm the lead. The text says, let your words be few. I'm already not doing what the text is telling me to do. But we need to realize that the pastor won't have all the answers, and we need to look at each other in this thing. And what are we doing? Can we feel the pain of the other beside us? I was in a funeral this week of a baby that died in the community. That's where philosophy is born right there. I was thinking, what am I doing? Nothing. Everything is vapor. Everything we do, when in that situation, everything we do is vapor. When you find yourself in that context. So what are we doing here, really? See, what is church? What? Ecclesiastes chapter 5. This is what it deals with. It confronts us with reality, and we need to be confronted by it. So what admonition has Solomon for us in the context of worship? And that's where I want to go into now. I don't want to take too much time on this introduction or context. So verse 1, what is the counsel? What does it say? Guard your steps as you go to the house of God, and draw near to listen rather than to offer the sacrifice of fools. So basically, the text begins with this idea that don't come in thinking already what to do. That what you already do, since everything, in your life, what to offer, listen. Come in to listen rather than to give, which is a weird thing, because normally we think, no, we need to offer ourselves in praise and in worship and give an offering. The first counsel, which is weird, to confront us with our reality is, don't assume that you know what to do. Listen. The word listen in the Hebrew is shema. To listen is the same word in the Hebrew to obey. Shema. To listen is to obey. Those that obey are those that listen. And these words, with the word delight that later appears in the same chapter, connects this whole idea with something that has happened before in 1 Samuel chapter 15. There's this whole situation with Saul and Samuel. And Samuel turns to Saul and says, has the Lord as much delight in burnt offerings and sacrificing as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than to sacrifice. So basically, Solomon starts talking about how everything that we do, the foolishness of our religion and our practice, can be sacrifice of fools. It can be just a foolish thing. So he advises us on how to get away from the sacrifice of fools, and he begins by saying, listen, rather than try to think you know everything. This vulnerability, is God here? We need to throw ourselves into the text in the hope that he'll speak to us, or else there's no hope for us whatsoever, right? If God doesn't speak through his word, what are we doing here? Just forms. So Solomon's saying, walk into the temple. Guard your steps so you won't trip. Listen rather than offer the sacrifice of fools. And now he breaks down what the sacrifice of fools sort of looks like. And he begins by saying, Do not be hasty in word or impulsive in thought to bring up a matter in the presence of God. For God is in heaven and you are on earth. Therefore, let your words be few. So, listen instead of give, because the idea is that it is possible for you to give and not be obedient. We're studying Genesis 4, and obviously we don't have time to get there, but the whole context behind the book of Ecclesiastes, one of the issues that are in the background is the story of Cain and Abel. One of the recurrent words in the book of Ecclesiastes is hevel, which is vapor, which is the same name of Abel. Abel is vapor. The whole book can be seen as sort of an unpacking of the story of Cain and Abel, because Abel is this figure, this elusive vapor. He doesn't speak, nothing happens. And then Cain is set up sort of as this person who commits the sacrifice of fools. We're studying Genesis 4, and the whole issue behind Genesis 4 is not really a matter of what he sacrificed or what he didn't sacrifice, but the whole idea of knowing what I have to do regardless of what God says. Right? Well, we know that there's a worship first, music, and then we need to pray, and then I give an offering, suddenly everything is good. And in the end, because we have detached the form from life, we become what? Legalists. And in the end, there's a tracing, there's a theme in the Bible that normally the legalists are the killers. You see? Those that know what they're doing, that know what religion is, that know every single answer to everything, are those that kill the brother. That's what happens to Cain. That's what happens to Jesus, right? That's what happened to Jesus. They knew what they were doing. Paul, right? Saul in the beginning, killing everybody. He knew the theology until he met Jesus. Offering the sacrifice of fools, which is in the background of what's going on here. So listen rather than give, because it's possible for us to do things and at the same time be disobedient. And this leads to evil. So then he says, do not be hasty in word or impulsive in thought. And in the ancient Near East, this idea is there. There's a text in Akkadian that says, one who acknowledges no guilt rushes to his God. Without thinking, he raises his hands and prays to his God. And I mean, the New Testament just unpacks all these things. You know, two people went to the temple. One of them said, Lord, look at me. I am this great person. The other guy says, Lord, I need mercy and forgiveness. I am a sinner. The reality is that both of them were wrong. Both of them were sinners, right? Both of them were wrong, praying and all these things, saying words that were vain. I mean, a tax collector asking for mercy. A tax collector doesn't give mercy. He's asking for something that he does not give. Right? Normally we think he's the good guy. Both of them are the bad guy. The reality is that one is at least recognizing his vulnerability. The other is not. So the foolish person walks in church knowing that he knows everything, walks into the temple, walks into the presence of God, knowing how everything functions without listening. And this ends up being evil. The text goes on to say, for God is in heaven and you are on earth. One of the greatest things that we have forgotten in our Christian journey and our practice is the absence of God. We assume that God is everywhere and with us in all places, and we're sort of Adventist panentheists or, whatever. Oh, where's Jesus? Oh, he's in my heart. Oh, oh, no, God is here with us. We assume all these things. What if he's not with us? God is in heaven. One of the last things Jesus said to his disciples and to the Pharisees, you know what it was? Where I'm going, you can't come with me. Absence. The whole Bible can be seen as this book helping us deal with the absence of God. Except for the Gospels, obviously, where Jesus is present. All the rest, even the last speeches of Jesus, this is how you should be when I'm not here with you. And the Spirit comes down and we say, well, there's the Spirit, he's always with us. He's not. He's like the wind. We don't know where he goes. So we need to be confronted with these things, with these realities, so that we can be vulnerable again in church. And not thinking that everything is as we think it is, or everything, this is the right church, this is the right theology, the right place, and we are passive. This is just entertainment, a program. We need to confront ourselves with our vulnerability, with the idea that what if God is not here, and how can we know that he is here? We need to throw ourselves into the text, and here Solomon is saying, let your words be few, for God is in heaven, and you are on earth. And then he speaks about dreams, because even in the amounts of words and everything that we say, we may live in a fantasy. We speak without thinking, and we construct a fantasy world. It's all vapor. And then he goes into talk that part of the sacrifice of fools, not listening, giving, and then speaking a lot also has to do with these vows we make. He says, when you make a vow to God, do not be late in paying it, for he takes no delight in fools. Again, the same word in 1 Samuel 15. Pay what you vow, he says, and this is not a matter of what to vow or what not to vow, but this is the point on verse 5. It is better that you should not vow than that you should vow and not pay. So treat God, don't think God is just a little tool. I remember when I was younger, and in high school specifically, and I wanted to date this girl, but I wanted to know the will of God, right? So I said, Lord, let me make a vow to you that if you reveal to me whatever, what to do, I will follow your guidance. So I said, I'm going to put a rock right here in this place here, sort of a hidden place, because I really wanted to date the girl, I'm going to leave a rock right there, and if it's still there tomorrow, this is a sign that you will, it's the way to go. Next day, I went over there all happy, right? Setting things up, put my perfume, it was going to work. Rock wasn't there. And then the funny thing is, I was like, wow. And then I went to speak with the girl, right? I said, hey, made this vow with God, and it didn't work out. So I don't think we should be together, I don't think we should be together. And then she came up to me and said, well, I also prayed last night, and the thing that I asked for took place. So I do think so we're confronted with two kinds of revelation now. And I said, well, then we should get together. Forget what I did. Let's just be together. Worst decision I made in my life. It did not turn out good, that relationship. So I should have heeded to the counsel. But again, we live in this fantasy world, right? This fantasy spirituality. And we need to confront the reality that, hey, sometimes there is no right path to go. For salvation, there is. There are two ways. One that leads to death and one that leads to life. But in between, there are 1,000 decisions, and in the majority of them, it doesn't matter which one you choose. It doesn't matter, again, when your heart has been educated by the Word of God, you see. So when you come up to God and start speaking all these things, all these vows, it just shows how foolish we are, really. Because in the reality, treat God with respect. He is in charge of all these things. He sees all these things. So let your vows to the side. Let God lead you. Be educated by the text with wisdom, and He will lead you. But all this foolishness and all that we could say ends up with this idea. In verse 6, do not let your speech cause you to sin, and do not say in the presence of the messenger of God that it was a mistake. Why should God be angry on account of your voice and destroy the work of your hands? Again, the idea of Cain, destroying the work of hands, angry at the voice of God. We don't have time to go there. Verse 7, for in many dreams, in this fantasy, and in many words, there is emptiness, which is hevel, there is vapor. Rather, and this is the solution, the remedy, fear God. The solution that Solomon gives to all the foolishness that we can do here in church, that we can sit down and speak a bunch of words, stand up to appeals, right? Isn't this our modern day vows? You stand up for appeals, and then there are 1,000 appeals every year. You don't even remember in the end of the year to which appeal you rose up, and it's confusing to be a Christian these days with our traditions. But the reality is Solomon is bringing us back to reality. You see, confront it. You see, what are we doing in church with all these things? The solution for Solomon is fear. The fear of God, which is a crazy concept that we need another hour to explore, but it's the realization that God is above and I am but creation. And we need His wisdom. We need to be educated in order to live a life under His rulership. The fear of God. Something that is not only about cognition, but it's about the form of life, the joining of two under the fear of God. And this is not also important only here, but the book of Ecclesiastes altogether ends in chapter 12, verse 13, saying the conclusion. And all has been heard is, fear God and keep His commandments. Because this applies to every person. For God will bring every act to judgment, everything which is hidden, whether it is good or evil. You want one of the first instances of the fear of God in the Bible. Normally, the fear of God in the book of Genesis appears in the context of divine silence. When was the last time you heard the voice of God? I haven't heard the voice of God all my life. I have friends who listen, have experiences where I have never heard the voice of God, and I assume this is the experience of all of you, the majority of you at least. The fear of God co-appears with this sense of God is not here. Abraham is ordered to take his son. We spoke about this together a while back. To take up his son to Moriah. There is no more revelation. He's struggling up the mountain, and in the end, when he stretches his hand to kill his son, the angel says, don't do it. Now I know that you fear God. Now I know that this knowledge or the revelation and all these vows, it's true. Your knowledge is connected to your life. Now I know that your whole being belongs to me. My favorite example is in the book of Exodus, where Pharaoh asks the midwives to kill the Hebrew children. Remember that story? He comes to them and says, when you see it's a boy, kill it. And the text says, and the Hebrew midwives feared God. And they did not do. Fear of God is not an abstract concept. It's something that deals with our existence and our life. And the remedy, according to Kohelet, to the foolishness that is everything we do, is this sense of the fear of God. That I am creation, I am broken, and we need each other. You see, we need to look at each other and see, hey, we're not perfect here. We need revelation. We need God. This is the remedy. My prayer is that we might, in history, in your story, develop this sense, this awareness of the fear of God, so that everything we do might not turn out to be sacrifice of fools. May God bless you.